Halo's art direction has changed a lot over the 2 decades that it's been around. Over that long time, the series has lost some of the flair that designs from the first game, Combat Evolved, had. So, what if it never changed? Welcome to Halo Revolved. This is a show about redesigning various characters and weapons from Halo games that came after Combat Evolved to better fit the 80s sci-fi, anime-esque aesthetic that CE had, and to see what could have been if that original art direction stayed consistent, from game to game, developer to developer. This is likely going to be a pretty lengthy video, so strap in and get yourself a MOA burger, I guess. First, I'd like to state a few things before we begin. When making these redesigns, I mean no ill will towards the artists who made these designs. This is simply a thought exercise and a fun way to give me practice drawing with a similar art direction to those old CE concept pieces. The designs I'll be revamping fit their respective games very well, and this is not any kind of attack on those later titles nor the people that made them. Now that that's out of the way, we can lay down a few ground rules for me to follow when making these redesigns. It must fit the specific look of the CE era of Halo, meaning it has to look like it'd fit in pre-release builds of CE, long-lost concept art, or the final game itself. This is pretty obvious, but it's still priority number 1. I mean, come on, it's like the reason this series exists. It still has to look like the source design to some extent. Say if I was redesigning an ODST, I wouldn't want that ODST to just look like a CE Marine with jet black armor and a visor sealing the helmet. It needs to carry elements of the original design through to the end, while still balancing its combat evolvedness. Designs are fan-chosen. I'm not going to be redesigning everything, since just these 5 designs took like 3 months, so instead I put out a poll and asked you guys which designs you want to see redesigned. If there aren't enough options for a certain category, I'll choose the design myself, but that shouldn't happen very much at all. Okay, that's it, I can't think of anything else. So, what game will I be covering first? That's right, I'll be covering Halo 2 in the series. Hopefully it'll be a series, this has been fun to work on. Why choose Halo 2, despite it being so close to CE in release? Simple. There's a lot of designs that deviate heavily from CE's art direction, for instance the Marines in this game. Note the harsher edges, still learn more realistic medals, and for Halo 2 specifically, look at that. Shit looks like a ribcage. Get this boy a fucking sandwich. It'll be my job to edit designs like this to look a lot simpler in shape, and to follow the guidelines established by various final or scrapped concepts throughout CE's development. And with that out of the way, we can begin with our first design. Our first design will be the ODST from Halo 2, the first and second most often forgotten version of our beloved Helljumpers, next to their Halo 4 iteration. Their BDU is already quite simple, lacking hallmark traits like their distinctive visor line and, dare I say, iconic titty armor. They do have some pouches lined up on their torso, as well as an ammo belt going along their midsection. They have padding for their upper legs and hips, and some distinctive shin armor, which becomes a trait they carry on in later games. Now, let's see what we can do to make this a bit more retro. And done! Our boys in black have been given a CE-styled makeover. I tried to keep what I could of the Halo 2 design, namely the simple helmet, pointy shoulders, ammo belt along the waist, and prominent shin armor. However, the overall silhouette has been thinned out quite a bit to match the more anime-esque aesthetic that Combat Evolved had in its early stages, especially for the Marines. For the torso armor, I mainly pulled from the pre-release Marines from the Macworld era of CE's development, with their chestplate being the most overt inspiration. These dashes of blue paint on the shin armor also nod to that design too. I made sure to keep the titty pouches from the original design as well, as I felt the redesign felt a bit lacking without them. The helmet of this design is mainly inspired by the Marines of CE, with the visor being pulled from the ODSTs of Halo 2, and the chin from the Chief's very own Mark V. I wanted to keep the helmet looking low-tech enough so that it doesn't step on the Chief's toes, but still looks like a nice in-between to slot betwixt the greenhorns and our beloved Cyborg. Overall, I'm quite happy with the result. If I could make one post-mortem change to this design, I would like to experiment with bulkier plates, just to see how it'd look. It'd likely look a lot closer to the source material, but at the cost of a stronger resemblance to the CE Marines. No sense crying over it now, on to the next design. Up next is the M247 Mounted Turret, or HMG as it may have been called had it been a proper weapon in Halo 2. It only appears in the final game as a stationary chain gun in various spots throughout the campaign, but it was apparently going to be its own weapon, as seen by this footage here. It likely would have filled a similar role to Halo 4's SAW in the sandbox, being a heavy automatic weapon for the UNSC. And it would have been the only good one, am I right, boys? This weapon carries a slick, albeit somewhat generic design for this type of firearm. It's the first weapon to my recollection that has the trend of tons of vent holes? I don't know what to call them, but they're funny cuts in the weapon that make it cool quicker, I guess. This would be a trait they'd carry over to the aforementioned SAW from Halo 4, a spiritual successor of sorts to the HMG. My goals with this redesign are to bulk it up a bit, as well as make it resemble a HMG that would have found its way into an older build of CE, a lost concept if you will. Let's see how it turns out. And here it is. Though still a little on the plain side, I think the design benefits greatly with that rounded metal sheet at the front. I pulled from the pre-release chain gun from the Macworld builds for that, as well as for a lot of the coloring on the redesign. My job was to simplify its shapes a little more, and I feel like I did that well enough. It's got more curves now as opposed to more jagged cuts, and the stock and grip have been made a more plush material. Not a lot of changes, but I'd say it was still interesting enough to work on. Next on the list is our first Covenant design, and one that I was surprised to see win in the polls, the Heretic Elite. This design is a more industrial spin-off of the traditional Elite combat harness we normally see, sporting harsher edges and more of a geometric, blocky shape language. They've got these distinctive wings on the back that remind me of things like Gundam X, or the robot featured on the cover of Linkin Park's Reanimation, which is a detail I really like. Any sort of flight harness on a character design that resembles wings as opposed to some piece of machinery like a jetpack is always a win in my book. Likely the most memorable parts of this design for many people are these swimmer-like eyepieces, the soda can with the tube that Bungie shoved up this poor guy's mouth, and the distinctive copper coloring. Regardless of what changes I make to this design, these three elements have to stay intact in some form or another. Time to once again hand this off to Future Penny to see what we did with this design. And voila! The Heretic Elite has been hit with my patented, copyrighted, all rights reserved, fuck you, you can't have it, retro beam. Forgive any modernities of the drawing, I haven't drawn Elites before, so I use the Halo 2 Anniversary model as my main reference. And in retrospect, that was a big stupid and should have modeled off of Halo 1's comparatively cartoonishly proportioned Elites. Look at this guy. Big droopy arms, empty, thoughtless eyes. I love him. Onto the armor itself. It's been greatly smoothed out as opposed to the original design. A lot of the detail stuff stayed though. In particular, the laser tag LEDs he's got across his armor. The actual armor itself, minus the harness, appears pretty lightweight and is quite flush with the undersuit for the most part, a trait I pulled from the original design. Probably the biggest difference is the new helmet given to the armor, which makes the headpiece more than a pair of Michael Phelps branded swimming goggles. I think that the pre-release influence shines through the most in the headpiece, in particular these cool ears that slick back from the eyepieces. The wings were rounded out greatly and given a less blocky design overall. Besides that, there's not much to say about them other than they're a bit bigger for the sake of style. Since most Elites have yellow shield emitters, I decided to differentiate the Heretic Elites by giving them a light blue instead. No other reason besides I wanted to. Overall, this design turned out pretty alright. I think more than anything I'd like to take another crack at it, for nothing else than just fixing proportions to be a little bit more CE than they are here. Besides that, I don't have much else to criticize. Alright, on to the next one. Now on to everyone's favorite weapon used by the Covenant in Halo 2, it's the beam rifle. Hooray! The design of the weapon is appropriately alien, with the grip placement giving the weapon an almost underslung feel? I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, I don't know guns. It's very angled and has a sharp feel to it. There's also a distinct hole in the weapon, which is where I assume plasma cartridges are stored. It's already well on its way to resembling something like the cut gravity rifle from Combat Evolved, so let's give it a nice makeover. And done. The beam rifle is now a lot more retro. The entire silhouette got changed in the redesign process as opposed to the HMG being basically untouched. It's a lot sharper, literally, than it was before, with the whole front of the gun looking like a play hazard and a lawsuit waiting to happen. I gave it a shinier look than it had in Halo 2, adding the signature purple and green shading on the weapon like the plasma rifle had. That's not where the Warby rifle's influence ends though. Near the barrel is where the actual beams would be fired from. It has these cyan blocks that the plasma rifle had in CE, as well as this orange beam that I can only assume helps with either sparking something in the gun to get it to fire, or is literally just there to hold it together better, and I'm just really dumb. I also pulled from cut weapons like the gravity rifle, excavator, and the gravity wrench for the gold coloration. It helps the weapon stand out amongst the other CE Covenant weaponry quite well, I think. The circle in the middle of the weapon has also been modified. I didn't really have anywhere to pull from, so I just made it look a bit more luminous as opposed to mechanical and called it a day. All in all, I think this redesign turned out super well. Even though it changes the silhouette heavily, it still fits in with the Covenant's aesthetic in CE quite nicely, feeling like a logical evolution of the many cut Covenant weapons throughout the game's development. In my honest, professional, very professional opinion. And now that we're done with the character and weapon designs for both factions, we should be done, right? Nope! I decided to add a bonus design that likely won't get the chance to be redesigned in the series, which means that's one more asset I need to draw. And the design you guys voted on is the Mark 50 sidekick from Halo Infinite. This cute little compact sidearm is the Chief's trusty sidekick throughout the game. Design-wise, it's a pretty boring little handgun with a design that would very much fit in with today's firearms. The pre-release look of the sidekick was even worse about this, missing this little attachment at the front of the gun. But Halo fans did what they did best and cried online until 343 changed it. Though in this case, I feel like the crying was kind of warranted, as the weapon simply didn't fit the art direction of Halo's human firearms and sidearms that was established in the late 90s. This is going to be a pretty tough weapon to redesign, as I want it to be different enough from the original that it's not just sidekick with yet another attachment, but I also can't step on the toes of the pistols that were made throughout Halo CE's development, much less the Halo 1 pistol! Let's see what I can do to give this weapon a classier flair. And here she be. Here's a retro-looking pistol design which looks like it could actually be used by the Pillar of Autumn crew, as opposed to the fucking hand cannon they use in the final game. The grip was redesigned to be a bit more slanted, like you took the original and just italicized it. The front of the weapon looks a lot more like an M6 series Magnum, while being a bit more low profile than, say, the M6D. The attachment was made a lot less flush with the barrel, so it looks like a separate part a bit more. The slide's also quite different, with a more exaggerated dip at the top here where the empty casings would be ejected from. I don't know, guns. There's a side attachment towards the back as well, which is situated right next to these classic-looking slide serrations. I modeled a lot of the changes made to the sidekick after this cut pistol from CE's development, seen only in this screenshot here, as well as some concept art for a human flood combat form. I additionally pulled from the original sidekick, and of course I had to take some cues from the... Overall, I feel like this redesign looks really good. When I finished the design, I noticed how it almost looks like one of the pistols from the Marathon games, a series which has definitely no relation to Halo whatsoever. Here's an image I found of the pistols from those games in a nice 2-pixel resolution for comparison. And that's everything! 5 solid redesigns in one video. Besides the Heretic Elite looking a little too H2AE, as well as the really phoned-in redesign for the HMG, I'm pretty proud of these, especially the ODST and Sidekick. I had a lot of fun working on these, so let me know how I did in the comments. I would love to turn this into a series here on the channel, assuming this video gets some amount of traction, so be sure to like and subscribe and share it with your fucking cat, I guess. I made this since I was super inspired by folks like Vernissage and Bizipizao doing redesign type stuff here on YouTube, so I decided, you know what? Fuck it, let me do something like that too, and after about 3 months in development, I'm finally done with this video! If you want to see more of this series, be sure to let me know. I'd like to get to the other Halo games like 3 and Reach, the Reclaimer Saga games, etc. The next couple of videos are likely going to be some Halo Reach highlights with friends, so if that sounds interesting, you know, please. That's all for now, so I'll see y'all later.